Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon. Welcome to another live stream edition of the Shrimp Tank out of Seattle. Very excited to be with you here today. We have an outstanding guest. We're going to talk to about Lisa in just a second. Yes, we are the Seattle Shrimp Tank coming to you live from Facebook on our Facebook page. We're happy to have you. We go every other week talking to great entrepreneurs from all over the Puget Sound area. My sidekick, my compadre, my co-host today, since Brad's on vacation, is none other than JB Wilson. It's been a while since JB's been with us, so we are so glad to have him. Just so you know, you can catch our podcast not only here, streaming live on Facebook, but you can also catch it on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, and of course, iHeartRadio, because we're a member of the iHeartRadio network. Don't ever miss one of our episodes. You can't do without us. And by the way, give us a 5-star next time you're in. Our guest for today's podcast is Lisa Kemmerling from Clean Lines Fashion Consulting. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. But first, we're just going to do a little catching up. JB Wilson Jr. the 7th. How you doing, man? It's been a long time.
It has been too long. And of course, now that I'm back here, we have to meet not in person, but virtually. But this is just as good.
It's like we're holograms.
That's right.
I think it's like we're actual holograms. I was having a conversation with a client and we were talking about virtual workers. And then I realized you don't have virtual workers. You have workers who are working virtually.
Virtually. That's it.
They're still human beings.
Right. It's funny how quickly we get adjusted to the new world.
Well, let me ask you this, since we have just a couple minutes before we bring Lisa on, and we haven't talked much, what are some of the biggest adjustments that you've seen, not only in your business for the last 3 months or so, but in life? What are some of the things that you've had to adjust to and make some pivots in?
Sure. Yeah. From a business standpoint, like everyone, at least in our state, adjusting to the personal protective equipment gear and overall cleanliness, I should say, that we have to deal with now, whether it's masks, sanitation. We just got in some dividers, some plexiglass dividers. So that's certainly, a new change. And we're meeting with, like we are today, individuals virtually more. On the personal front, I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the mask. I find myself, when I go to the grocery store, getting out of the car, I'm about halfway there, and then I got to turn around, then come back. So I'm getting used to little things like that. But by and large, everyone in my family's healthy, which is the most important, and we're making do pretty well.
Yeah, I think we're going to go to a new place where the handshake is dead. It's completely dead, but what is going to be alive is as you walk out the door, got my keys, got my wallet, got my cell phone, got my mask.
That's the new peg in the stool.
Well, you know what? If it helps keep, obviously if it keeps people healthy, keeps businesses operating and helps us get back to some regularity, then that's what we need to do.
That's the most important.
Absolutely. Well, you know what we need to do now, JB? We need to introduce our guest. Lisa Kemmerling comes to us as a referral, and we love referrals. Thank you to past guest, Mr. Matt Augsburger. He sent us Lisa. JB, would you tell everybody a little bit more about Lisa Kemmerling and what she does?
I would love to. So Lisa Kemmerling started Clean Lines Fashion Consulting 2 years ago. It was a brainchild of hers for a long time. Lisa has been passionate about fashion since she was in grade school and ideally wanted to be a clothing and shoe designer. As life would have it, her parents didn't have the resources to send her to the Fashion Institute of Chicago after she graduated from high school. So instead, Lisa worked in mortgage banking directly after moving to California and then pursued the medical field as a way to help others. Lisa has spent 20 years in the medical field in various roles, such as sales consultant, a manager, and finally a director of sales and marketing. One of her greatest achievements while working in medical sales was pursuing and achieving her bachelor's degree while working full-time in the field at the same time. Coupled with her strong background in outside sales and a passion for fashion, Clean Lines Fashion Consulting has provided Lisa with what she loves to do best, which is working with men and women to bring out their authentic self through clothing and styles. Lisa has been married to her husband, Todd, for 30 years, and together they have one daughter, Alexa, who graduated from University of Washington, Seattle last June. Lisa, once again, welcome to the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Thank you so much, JB. Really excited to be here. It's such an opportunity to actually speak with all of you.
Well, Lisa, we think it's an opportunity, and I want you to know that I am debuting a brand new shirt because I was a little freaked out, that's like, okay, I got to show up. If I'm going to talk to a fashion consultant, I better bring out the new gear. My daughter works in the corporate office of Nordstrom, so I know the importance of shirts. We're going to talk about that. But give us a little bit of background on what made you want to go into this. I know you have a passion for it, but was there some sort of a trigger that shifted you into this line of work?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for asking me that. Yes, actually, there is a time when my parents had taken us on a cross-country trip from Illinois, where I grew up, to Toronto, Canada. And we had gone into this little boutique. I was 12 years old, and I found this fantastic sweater that I really wanted, and I begged my mother to buy it for me, and she said no. And then fast forward to a few months later, in October was my birthday, and what appeared for my birthday was that fantastic sweater. And it was right then and there I knew that fashion was so powerful. It had such an impact on people and the way that they feel. When I would wear that sweater and I would wear it to school, I felt like $1 million. So that's what was the one trigger in my life.
That's very good. JB, and since we're going to kind of go back and forth. We can't nudge each other since we're sitting next to each other. So we'll get into a groove here.
Lisa, I was curious as I was looking at your website and reading your bio and learning a little bit more about what you do. How did you come up with the name Clean Lines Fashion Consulting?
And I get asked that a lot. Thank you for asking that. It's a personal thing, but I will share with you. It stands for two initials. One, my sister Connie, and then one, my name, Lisa. And I put the whole thing together sitting at a restaurant one night with my husband, and we were talking. I said, I want a very unique name. Plus, I love simple lines, clean lines, just very simple things. So that's how I came up with it.
So Lisa, I have to ask, I was joking a little bit about the shirt. It is brand new. It is its debut, and now it's going to be immortalized. But in today's COVID world, where we're all sitting in a Zoom meeting or in a Zoom podcast like this, the shirt has become incredibly important. And the poor slacks and shoes and socks, they're like yesterday's news. How are you dealing with this as a fashion consultant? Hopefully we all come back again and get to see each other, but how has this changed your business, and what kind of advice can you give our viewers and our listeners for a virtual world?
That's a great question. So starting with today's world, everything is just from the waist up. So when people are looking at us and you get this little pinhole that we can look at, you want to present your best self forward. So I always say, find something that looks good on you, whatever that may be, and put that color forward. If it's navy, like I'm wearing navy today with, paired with white, you're wearing gray, Dan. I mean, find something that just is striking and it lets your backdrop, you bounce off the backdrop. So, just kind of looking the best so that that person on the other end takes a look at you and says, oh my gosh, you look great. Now what you wear below is entirely up to you.
And JB, what are you wearing? No, I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know, JB. Go ahead.
Lisa, we were chatting a little bit beforehand, before we got on the air here, and I'm just curious, and maybe this has changed a little bit from what we just talked about of, again, it's kind of a waist up thing, but overall, when someone hears fashion consulting or that term, they think immediately, well, that sounds great, way out of my price range. I may need the service, can't afford it. So talk a little bit about that. How can someone maybe create, a fashionable wardrobe or something that's professional on a budget?
Yeah, that's another important question. And so I like to say that it's all about how do you view yourself? What important event is happening in your life? Are you somebody that's out of college and you're looking for your first job? Because that first impression is a very important and lasting impression. And again, from the waist up. So if it's somebody who's moving up the ladder and looking at the different facets of that individual's life, what is it that's going to, again, different budgets at different ranges of our lives, correct? So as I say, a young person, a lot of times I'll actually look at taking my pricing down a little bit so that it can work with them. And they don't feel like it's, going to break the bank, so to speak.
Yeah. Good.
So let me ask you this along those lines. So it sounds like you have first of all, you have a program for anybody, whether they're young and it's just starting out in their career, or they're old like JB and me. Now JB's way younger than me. You have for all different types of people, you have a program for. It leads me to thinking of what I remember being younger, and the style, I had to wear a suit all the time, or I had to wear a jacket and slacks all the time. There was kind of, and for women, a business suit or a dress. There was kind of more of a formality around work. That's changed an awful lot over the years. It's changed dramatically, even from when you go visit the East Coast. It's still, and I actually think this whole working from home and from the top, it's changing. It's still. Where do you see the future of work attire going, and how do you play a role in that?
Yeah, I actually think that clothing is going to change. And we saw a shift. If talking about yourself, Dan, and even myself, in the days of monochromatic look was very in, navy, skirt, navy jacket,
Right.
Even to the hosiery and the shoes. Nowadays, people are looking at, it's gotten very casual. So what I think you're going to see a shift where it's going to go just the opposite direction, because quite a few people are now going to be competing for another job. So you maybe have, instead of one or two people competing, you now have hundreds, for that same role.
Right.
So you're going to have to stand out, and maybe that casual sweatshirt and those casual leggings just isn't going to, fly in today's world.
Lisa, I'm going to try to sneak in one more quick question, as I know we're coming up on a commercial break here soon. I'm going to make the assumption, but I could be wrong, that a majority, or at least more so, of your clients are female than male. So if that's the case, and maybe I'm surprised, how do you target, maybe if it's the male population, or if that's not the assumption, how do you target certain demographics that may not think about fashion consulting as something for them?
Fabulous question. And actually, it has been most recently, starting at the end of last year up until COVID hit, it was mostly men that I was working with. And primarily because most of the gentlemen that I work with are all professionals. They're, attorneys, they're realtors, they're, CFO, CEO, somebody that's looking for an opportunity to look, they're busy people. They want to say, okay, here, you as a fashion consultant, this is my budget, go out and this is what I'm looking for after I've gotten their digits and we know exactly what their likes are. And that's what I do. I take care of it for them. So it's kind of having your own personal shopper without, having your own personal shopper.
Very fascinating.
So, it's interesting. My wife Barb and I really enjoy, and this came from our daughter who works at Nordstrom. She said, "You got to watch this." We watch Queer Eye, right? And so I have learned a ton from Tan. I don't know Tan's last name, but about shirts. And at one time, the French toque. But I don't do a French toque. I don't know how to do that. But I've learned a lot about how clothes should fit, where the seam on the shoulder is supposed to be, and all of that. And when you say that you've had more men clients, I think that's because we have no idea what we're doing. Is that, not to put you on the spot, but is that just the case? Is it something that we just never had a clue? And now all of a sudden we want to look like the clothes fit us. How big of an issue is that as you're helping people on helping them understand how clothes are supposed to fit?
I think it's really important because, as we've said many times in the business world, if you are doing an interview or you're doing a presentation, you get one shot, one opportunity. And that first impression is a very lasting impression. So I think most of the men that I've had the opportunity and the good fortune to work with have said, this is what I'm looking for. Maybe they've got a shirt that's from 10 years ago and they're still wearing it because it's in good quality. But perhaps maybe, like you mentioned, maybe the seams aren't in the right place, or maybe the lapel doesn't, lay down nicely, or maybe it's buttons and they need to be buttonless. There's a whole collection of reasons why. So I always like to sit down with that person during my consultation and help them to find out what the look is. Plus I give them education along the way and tell them what's current and what's in.
That's great. Well, what's in right now is our commercial. Our commercial is in right now. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Lisa Kemmerling, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out what she thinks about mom jeans. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more from the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most. Never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years in your future? What new, big changes would you take on? What would be next? Text the word IDEAL to 89800 and discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I am JB Wilson, along with my fashion-forward co-host, Dan Whedon. Remember, you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And Dan, you teed up a very interesting question for our next segment, which is Hot or Not.
Hot or Not is sponsored by our shrimp peeler sponsors, West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun. And I know you've watched a couple of these, Lisa. You know that Hot or Not is where JB and I pepper you with questions, to make you think a little bit and tell us if you think the concept or topic is hot or not, and then why. And I'm only asking this one for a friend. Okay, I'm asking this for a friend. Hot or not, mom jeans.
So I think they're actually hot right now because mom jeans were out for a while. And then as many women are now finding that those high-waisted jeans are coming back in, they're very fashionable. And even a woman, that wears these, kind of shorter top on them, and then they can see the look on them, looks fantastic. So
Well, here's the problem. The moms look fine in mom jeans. It's when the guys get accused, right, JB? It's when the guys get accused of wearing mom jeans.
Or dad jeans.
And you know what? Jeans, and I'm JB, I'm just going to do a quick follow-up. Jeans are good, nice jeans, in all honesty, are used in business all the time. The one thing, and again, I kind of picked this up from the show, one of the things about jeans is they have to fit correctly, and you don't want mom jeans if you're using them as part of your attire. And I'll use a guy where you're going to throw on a jacket or something like that. The tapering and all of that is incredibly important to have a jeans look good in a business sense. Is that correct, Lisa?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to JB.
No. I don't care what JB thinks.
Yeah, it depends in business. My apologies. Wow.
No, that's okay.
Yes. So in that instance, if you're going to throw on a jacket with it, for example, today I'm wearing the navy and the white. I would definitely make sure that I'm not wearing mom jeans today. I would want to have a more fitted kind of a nice tapered leg and maybe more of a skinny leg, with a little slit on the side. And then maybe a heel. If you're going to wear the mom jeans, it's all about the fit and it's all about the type of shirt that you're wearing with it. So vitally important.
Okay. JB, you're up.
So one of the things that I do, and I don't know if it's out of just being lazy or if it's because I don't know what I don't know or I don't know what I'm doing. When I go into a store, and I'll just use, say, Nordstrom as an example, in the men's department at least, the mannequins always look, of course, very polished, put together, and oftentimes, and my wife can attest to this, I will just say I'll just take that, right, in my size, but I'll take that. So the hot or not is buying the same clothes that a mannequin is wearing, or should you use that as inspiration and mold it to yourself?
I'm going to say that it's not, and use that as inspiration. If you really are curious as to what's going to look good on you, just use that as a moment to say, okay, I like that look, but is it going to look good on me? And that's where a consultant, either at Nordstrom's or outside of Nordstrom's like myself, would be able to help and guide you so that you can say, okay, baby, that shirt and those pants look fantastic, but maybe that sweater, not so much.
That's a good point. I think it's that pairing together that I have difficulty with from different areas. So good.
So Lisa, hot or not, we're all working from home. I always did anyway, but we're all working from home and doing a lot of virtual working. Hot or not, getting dressed up for work to improve productivity.
Totally hot. And
totally hot.
Yes, and I say that because, and this is one of the things that I think is really important. Again, you're trying to lead people, not you personally, Dan, but maybe yes, or whoever it is that you are, the individual that's in that position. If you're a leader, you should look really good. And I think that you should be dressing just like you were if you were going to your office. If you went to your office and you wore a sweatshirt and jeans, then great. That's, the look you want to look in. But if you're not, I think dressing to that camera, that pinhole is vitally important.
What if though you're not, and I'm just curious because I've heard this, even if you're not meeting with people, is it still important to kind of at least get dressed up, maybe not as formally, but to work from home and to be productive? Is our clothes part of that equation?
Without a shadow of a doubt, hot. Ever since I started in the business world, fresh out of college, and things that I've done is I've gotten up every single day. It's a routine for me. I get up, do my hair, makeup, put my clothes on, and I feel 100% more productive. And I think most people do. And I think that that's a concept that is getting a lot more mileage now because we are working from home. So I'd say take it the extra mile and feel good about what you're doing.
Lisa, there's a term that was new to me that I heard about a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago from my mom, capsule clothing or capsule wardrobes, the idea of minimalist clothing using 10 to 12 pieces and making an entire wardrobe out of that. So minimalist clothing or that type of style, hot or not?
Totally hot. And I say that again, I use the totally in there because a few of my clients have very minimal wardrobes. And when they've hired me, they've had me come in and say, I just don't know what to do with this half a dozen pieces that I have, or this dozen or 2 dozen, whatever it is. And what I'll do is I'll start pairing these outfits. When they only thought that they had 12, by the time we're finished with that actual appointment, it looks like they had 24 or 48 outfits because I pair it all together, take a photograph of them, and then they get to have it for themselves.
Now, let me ask you a quick follow-up, which is a little bit in the same vein, but on the other end of the spectrum. I've also heard sort of maybe a rule that some people have where if you haven't worn something in, for a full season cycle or maybe 2 years worth, then get rid of it. We just talked about mom jeans and how sometimes things go out of fashion and come back into fashion. So what about that side of things? is it hot to keep things knowing that they're not in style because they may come back later? Or do you just get rid of them if you're not going to wear them for a while?
Well, we'll start with not, and then I'm going to go to hot. So the not is definitely unless you have a huge closet and a huge, as I call it, real estate space, for all of this clothing that you want to keep that may come back in, then I would say get rid of it. So that's where the not is. The hot is that it is cyclical. The clothes will come back in, and those mom jeans that were out will be back in. That shirt or that jacket that you found that was really neat and it kind of had a Western wear look, that'll be back in. So I'd say just get rid of it and then take that moment and keep that closet free, and then go out and perhaps look at something, unless it's really special. That's what I like to say.
Okay, good.
I actually have two questions now, because I had a regular question, but that you just made me think of it. And I'm just curious, from a gender perspective, is that true? What you just said, is that more true for women's fashions than it is for men's? Because I don't know that it seems like men's stay a little bit more constant. And I just, because we had Carly Tizano on, I actually went through and got rid of a whole bunch of stuff. It was amazing. But is that more true for women's clothing than for men's?
Yes, because men's styles they'll change in certain areas, like the lapel on a jacket, or the shirts, like we talked about, the button down style. Maybe it's not most popular now, and maybe it's just the simple shirt collar open like you have right now. Whereas women's, they are constantly changing. And like I said, I attend the Magic Show in Las Vegas, and I see the different styles before they ever even come into the stores. And so I see what's coming in the next season, and it's amazing how many things change and cycle out.
Sure. So look, I want to know we want to have people know how you work with your clients. Let's say JB says, I got to look like Dan. I can't do it. I've got to be more like Dan. And so he comes in and he says, Lisa, help me out. What does a normal client engagement look like from, say, a beginning to where you kind of have this maintenance thing going on, it seems?
Sure. First thing I want to do is, when I get to know the individual, I want to take that moment. I really want to find out, what are the colors that are going to look best on him? Is it something that is more fitted? Is it more loose? I mean, there's all these questions. Plus, I want it to be authentic for him. Him saying that he wants to look like you sounds fantastic, except he should look like him, right?
I guess
and
so.
That's the whole idea, is authenticity is so important. And that's kind of what I do, is I help to bring out that authentic individual through their clothing and style.
Lisa, something that maybe a lot of our listeners can relate to, or people that are watching, impulse buying. Tempting.
I would say it's not. And I will say that as an experience of when I was in my 20s and into my early 30s, I was an impulse buyer. And I would find these outfits that looked really great on the mannequin. So it looked really great on the mannequin. I'd bring it home, and then I would have buyer's remorse. And then a couple of days later, I'm like, I wish I could take this thing back. So now I think it's so much more important, because people are wanting to hang on to their money a little more tightly, is let's look at, what do you have in your closet? Let's work with what you have there, and then add a few refined pieces to it to enhance what you already have.
And Dan, I'm going to ask you a really quick,
sure,
just because you mentioned it, Lisa. So going back to what Dan asked you about your process, it sounds like that for individuals that you work with initially, you start with what they have first, or at least what they have, versus doesn't matter what you have, let's just go out and buy some stuff.
Absolutely. It goes to that personal point that we talked about at the very beginning, which is not to blow anybody's bank, accounts per se. What I want to do is look at what they have in their closet. Maybe they've got something in there that's really fantastic and authentic, and it was out 10 years ago, but it's now back in its current. So before we toss it, let's work with those items, and then let's enhance what they maybe need. Maybe they need a blouse. Maybe it's a guys need a couple of shirts and some ties.
Well, you know what we need right now? I don't need any more ties, but I do need to go to commercial. So we're going to do that right here. We are going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Lisa Kemmerling from Clean Lines Fashion Consulting, For our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to ask about what her biggest epic fashion failure was. So be thinking about that, Lisa. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Thank you, Dan.
Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you don't have a professional life and a personal life. You have a life. And that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. Your business is a vehicle to fuel your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon worked with small and medium-sized business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering from those obstacles of business and life. Through his consulting work and his partnership with First Underwriters Insurance to finance your risk, he'll make sure that you, with confidence, unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 360-271-1592 or email Dan at danwhedon.com. Tell Dan you heard him on the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast and receive a 20% discount on any work you agree to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview some of the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I, once again, am JB Wilson, along with my trend-setting co-host, Dan Whedon. You can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, or you can catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Our next segment, Plead the Fifth. I shouldn't say dreaded.
Oh, it's not dreaded for us.
That's correct. We're not in the
could
hot
be
seat.
for Lisa. Well, no, we'll see. I bet she's not gonna fair catch any of them. Our Plead the Fifth section is sponsored by our Shrimp Peelers, West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. One thing quickly, JB, before we go on to the Plead the Fifth section, the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, KEDA, has been a sponsor the last couple of years. John Powers, who has been their executive director for, 5, 6, 7 years, is retiring. John's a great guy. He's going to ride off into the sunset of retirement. He lives on, I'm going to say it. He lives in the same city that Lisa does. I'm going to say that. So maybe we can get him hooked up to get some clothes for his new retirement. But congratulations to John on that. Plead the Fifth, Lisa. We're going to, again, pepper you with questions about life and business and clothing and all of that. These are going to be tougher. You can plead the fifth just once. So I have to believe even you probably at some point had some sort of an epic fashion failure. Would you please share that with us?
Yes, Dan, I was sitting here and I was laughing to myself of, yes, in my late 20s, I wore some flowered shorts that were really loud looking with pink tennis shoes and some white low-rise socks. And I thought it looked really fashionable. In actuality, I did not.
How quickly did you find out it was a knot?
It was pretty quick because I was engaged to be married at that point, and my future husband, which is now my husband today, said to me, "Those don't look. That is not a great looking outfit."
And you still married him.
And he still married him.
So listen, before I go to JB, it's funny. I saw this meme recently, and we were talking about face masks earlier. It was a great meme. I don't remember. It must have been Facebook, but it was a cartoon of a wife talking to her husband, and he had a face mask on, and she said, "I can't believe you wore that mask with a pattern." So let me ask you really quick before we go to JB. I got to believe that there's something about that as well. I realized that I got some fun masks, and then I had to go back to church. It's like, oh, none of these masks really kind of
Go through outfit.
I need to get a plane. I got to get a plane mask, you know, and you start looking how much of an impact is our face masks going to have on fashion?
I think a huge, impact, because I've been really lucky. My sister Lori actually made a whole series of fabulous face masks for me, and I've been switching them out with different outfits. And I think it's really important. If you look at anything, Nordstrom's, any store, American Eagle, all of them, they're all selling them now. So that's current and it's in.
So Lisa, I'm not sure on your side who is tuning in or watching, or maybe watching later. We know from your bio that you have a daughter, Alexa, who graduated from University of Washington. So I'm curious, and this is the plead the fifth. What is the piece of fashion advice that you would give to her?
I'm going to plead the fifth.
Wow. JB, that was such a good question. That was really
well. And the plead the fifth. Okay, I was curious.
I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to give you another one. You got her to plead the fifth. So bring out the big guns now.
Okay, so we'll let that one go. I'll be the first to admit that I don't watch them because well, first of all, I have two small children, so my time is a little. But there are a plethora of fashion shows. Be it a guilty pleasure, maybe it's something you're really interested in. So, I don't do Project Runway, Making the Cut, I think is one with Heidi Klum. Do you have a guilty pleasure of a fashion TV show that you enjoy watching?
Not a fashion TV show, but I watch The Voice. So my guilty pleasure is The Voice, and the reasoning behind that is their outfits change for every performance. And so I love seeing what the fashion consultants have, put them in, and I'm completely attracted to that.
Very good.
So thanks to JB, we've got no more fair catches, no more pleading the fifth. So I'm going to ask this. I've got to believe. I want you to wax poetic on this.
Okay.
As a fashion consultant, in the days when we did, and once again may walk into a cocktail party or a party of some sort that's a big reception, I gotta believe you have to be looking around at people and saying, no. I mean, you're not saying it out loud. Do you catch yourself checking out what everybody's wearing, male or female, and giving a quick judgment as to, yeah, that's great, and no, that's no good? Do you find yourself doing that?
Honestly, yes and no. I mean, and I say that very gingerly. For the guys, I probably never, unless it's something that's really loud and would be kind of out there. But for the women, most definitely. And part of that is because we're our own worst critics, are we not, as women? So we tend to look at each other and say, okay, that looks fantastic, or that doesn't look fantastic. I would never say it to them unless they hired me, and that'd be a different story.
Lisa, I'm going to broaden this out a little bit for this next plead the fifth. So obviously we learned a little bit about your career path overall, right? Mm-hmm. Field, a little bit of work in the mortgage, banking industry, and certainly fashion as well. So when you look back over your storied career in all of those roles, if you had the opportunity to go back and relive your career, what would you do differently? What would you not do at all, or what would you change?
I would stay with doing what I did in the medical field. I wouldn't change 1 minute of that. It was some of the 20 of the best years in my business life, I'd like to say, and I learned a lot from that. The thing that I would probably change is I would spend less money on clothes. So, and keep in my closet and be more mindful of what I have in there and pair it with what I would want to buy in the future. So yeah, that's probably my best answer.
That's probably a lesson we can all learn. Yeah, to be honest.
Well, Lisa, I mentioned that my wife Barb and I like watching Queer Eye. We pick up a whole bunch of different things from it. And are you familiar with the show?
Yes.
So what happens is that somebody nominates the person, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody nominates the person, and that's where they go and then they fix them up and get them all pretty and going, right? have you ever had a situation where children have come to you and said, you need to fix my mom or fix my dad? We're going to hire you to go. You don't have to give names, but does that happen at all?
It has not happened yet, where a child has come up to me and said that.
Or even the other way around, where maybe a parent said, you need to fix my, were you ever referred in? That one happens. Okay.
That has happened where I've had an adult parent, a parent say to maybe their young adult child,
Right.
that they wanted to have me work with that person. And that's been, I'd say that's fun. And do they want my help? That's the other question. So it's very important because that's where you get that symbiosis working together.
So JB, I hope it's okay. I'm going to ask one last question before we go. I know I'm probably cutting into it, but I wanted maybe more than anything for you to summarize, Lisa, the breadth and scope of people that you can consult, because I think JB brought it up earlier. You think of a fashion consultant and a lot of people might say, boy, that's not something I can do or I can afford. You have a program that can really help anybody. Is that right?
Absolutely. My opportunity is simply to work with people who feel that they are just maybe stuck somewhere. They're coming into a new career, they're moving up in their career, they're coming out of college and they need an opportunity. Maybe it's a special event. Maybe they're going to be going to a party that they want a special outfit for. Or it may just be a mom staying at home with their children and they want to have some clothes that look good for date night. So there's a whole collection and series and reasons why somebody would hire me. And I always like to say there's a budget for everyone. And I do have 3 different categories that, help that out. And I'm willing to work with them with whatever their needs are.
Lisa, it's been fascinating having this conversation with you. It always amazes me how quickly the time goes.
It is.
We're at the end here. So first of all, we want to thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
For individuals who want to find out more about you, about what you do, about your business, how can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Very easy. 925-719-2314 is my personal cell number. They can call me on that, or they can contact me at lisa@cleanlinesfashion.com.
Perfect.
Well, I echo. Thank you, Lisa, for being on our next show.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Our pleasure. Our next show from the virtual Weed Unleashed studio will be 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, July 22nd. We'll be back here on Facebook, where our guest will be Bradley Franco with Ulterior Flux. Make sure you check out all the replays at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the whole thing. And remember, to become a shark, we all start out as sharp-dressed shrimp.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the shrimp